Be doing The Last of Us. The Last of Us, which is an adaptation of the popular video game series. Here we have the HBO show starring Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. Pedro Pascal, who's making the rounds. He's everywhere nowadays. People see him. Mandalorian is another big show that he has that's on right now. Bella Ramsey, people know from Game of Thrones. She played Lyanna Mormont in that. And here she's playing Ellie. So it is a story in a post-apocalyptic world here, and you see kind of the connection between Joel and Ellie, like we've seen the older, male figure and the younger girl. That's all the rage nowadays. You know what I mean? Speaking of the Mandalorian, you had that with Mandy and the kid. You got him and Baby Grogu hanging around.
Hey, you have a show about a gruff older kind of badass escorting a child. Just give Pedro Pascal a call because he kills it every single time.
Seeing things like
Logan. He's daddy to Baby Yoda or Grogu, excuse me. He's daddy to Ellie, and he's daddy to the internet.
Yes.
So you kind of have that kind of going on there, and it's pretty simple. It's basically one big ass escort mission. He's got to take this girl all the way to a point of meeting the Fireflies because they want to kind of get her. And we're going to be doing spoilers for if the video game and obviously the show because it's over now. So we're going to be getting into that in case
spoilers for a 10-plus-year-old video game, and 2, spoilers for an HBO show, which, come on, spoilers for those shows are fair game the second they air, essentially, which is upsetting a little bit, but it does kind of make preparing for the show a little easier.
Yeah. So, and then, Brandon, have you played the video games? Big fan of the video games?
Oh, yes, I love those games. I played through the first one, I think, at least 3 times.
Oh, wow.
And, of course, the second one I love a lot. And that one's, of course, another conversation. But, yeah, I love those games.
Okay, it's very awesome. So in this world, you have these zombie-like creatures that look really disgusting, really gnarly, because it's like this fungal type of infection. And you have like these different versions. You have these clickers and bloaters and all these kind of different-looking kind of zombie-type creatures that look really good in the show. A lot of the effects, the makeup look very, very good in the show.
And just real quick, most of the effects, especially when you see the clickers, when you see the bloater that shows up in episode 5, all of it is done practically. It's all prosthetics, which I think is a huge kudos to both the showrunners, Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, for going with practical effects for all that and letting us just see all the little details of how nasty this infection is. And also because when you can do it practical, do it practical.
Yeah.
Even if there are some slight CG touches, which I actually think enhance the movement of some of these performers.
Yeah. Because it does look very, very good. And you have Ellie, and what makes her so special is that she is immune to the infection there. If she gets bit, she does not turn into a zombie-like creature. So it kind of makes her very, very unique and very special. And one of the main reasons that the Fireflies are, giving this mission to Joel and Tess, who Tess in this is played by Anna Torv, who people know Anna Torv. She was in Fringe. Big fan of that show. And then
Fringe, and most recently Mindhunter, and also Supergirl.
Yeah.
Yes, love that show.
So she plays Tess in this. So they're given the mission to escort this girl to another Fireflies facility that is out west. And basically, if you know the game, what they're going to do is basically dissect her in order to figure out why she is immune and try to figure out a way to get a cure for the zombie infection that we see here. So watching this 9-episode season, I'm going to let Brandon go first since he is a big fan of the video games himself. What were your thoughts on this show, and you being a person who's played a lot of the video game? Is it a different viewing experience for you in general of watching the show as opposed to playing the game? And what's some of the differences that you noticed as opposed to the show today?
Yeah. Well, like from the start, I was like hyped like when they announced that this was going to be a show, but also very cautious because video game adaptations have a very bad history of being not so good, and that's putting it very lightly. But yeah, no, I was very excited for this show, and just having like Neil Druckmann, like the guy who like made the game himself, a part of the show was a very good sign for me. But yeah, while watching the show, I think it absolutely delivered. Like from playing the games, it's like just enough, like almost 1-to-1, but like still does like so many things like differently that like you can't do in a game, of course. Like, and of course, like the game does stuff that you can't do in a show. Like there's significantly a lot less violence in the show because we're with the characters more. We're spending more time developing them and their relationships in the world. And that's like an aspect I absolutely love, like those flashbacks in like the first 2 episodes, right? 2, 3.
Yeah, the first 2 episodes have cold opens that are really exploring the origin of the cordyceps infection. The second one, where we follow I'm trying to remember the name for the type of doctor, but they study fungi, a mycologist, excuse me, in Indonesia, who's played by. Excuse me, I'm looking up her name. Who's played by holy shit, Christine Hakim, who is a Indonesian actress who, for all of you action nerds, she played Iko Uwais' mom in Gareth Evans' Marantau.
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
She is one of the first people to discover this fungal infection, and she has this delivery where it's all done in a single take, where this military guy is trying to ask, okay, this infection is happening. We lost a bunch of the people that were bitten. What can we do? Can we make a medicine? Can we treat this? What's going to happen? It's like, bomb the city, kill millions, bomb the city, kill everybody in it. And can you please drive me home? I would like to be with my family, which is haunting. Which the second, both this and we talked about in the pilot with John Hannah, this is why you get a guy like Craig Mazin, who did such an incredible job with Chernobyl, who, when it was announced he was going to be a co-showrunner with Neil Druckmann, I was like, we good.
Yeah. Those, like, just like you said, those flashbacks, especially that one, just gives so much insight into the world that the game doesn't give you. Like the game really jumps you in, like after that first episode, like you're with Joel and
both a good thing and especially in comparison with the show, I'll say like a slight critique is because in the video game you're so tied with Joel's perspective. You don't get to flesh out the rest of the world. You don't get to see the backstory of the hunters. You don't get to see especially in the third episode, this beautiful relationship between Bill and Frank, played by Nick Offerman and Murray Bartley. You don't get the backstory of the hunters. You don't get a little bit of David's character development. You don't get to spend much time with Henry and Sam outside of your interaction with Joel.
Exactly. And it's like, it's something that like I loved watching week to week, like to see like the differences, like what was going to be different and what was going to be the same as like somebody who played the game. And like even like to my friends who haven't like played the games, I love watching their reactions and being like, "Ooh, I know what's gonna happen, but you don't, and I'm scared for you."
It's basically that meme of Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal in the car, where it's like your friend devastated by the last stuff. Me, you play the game.
So good.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So this, so I was waiting for this show to end, and then I was going to binge all of it. So I watched all of it basically in one night, and just watched it back to back. And a lot of these are just really, really great episodes. Just back to back. You have, the first 2 episodes, which Nick mentioned, is intro to it. Giving backstory about the infection, how that kind of came to be. Then it's really more kind of depressing, like just back to back. You have the episodes of long time, which was the Nick Offerman episodes.
One of my favorite things I've seen online was this guy on TikTok. I think his name is Sensei Gabe. He did like act out like a pitch meeting for The Last of Us. It's like first episode, introduce the world, introduce the characters, establish it. Second episode, introduce the journey that our heroes go on and set up the rest of the season. Third episode, we're gonna make them cry like a bitch.
Because
two words: gay rednecks. And
yeah, because you have a really sad episode with Long Time, which I think is a great episode with Nick Offerman, where they're playing Bill and Frank. That's that episode. Then after that episode is Please Hold to My Hand. That's the episode there with Kansas City. So you see Henry and Sam. You see that episode. And what I love about what they do a lot with this world and the people in this world, and with that episode was explaining, like, you see both sides. Like, you see where you see these people kind of rise up against Fedra, which was this, you hear about this, was kind of like this fascist, organization there in this city that was running things. And so when people, you see people, rise up, it's like, oh, great. So you see their point of view there.
But something I love about, especially the 5th episode, where we get to see the night of the uprising. You see both the celebrations, like, hey, we're free, but you also see the ugly side of it. You see, it's basically being on boots on the ground in the French Revolution, which I think is something that Druckmann and Mazin wanted to do, especially because they weren't tied so tightly to Joel and Ellie's perspective, that you get to explore these other dynamics. Because in the game, this entire section of Joel and Ellie's journey, the hunters, as they're called in the game, are just NPCs. They are just there for you to murder.
Yeah,
I think that's something Druckmann probably really wanted to emphasize, since he didn't get to do it in the first game. Because the second game, they really do that. Like, they give a face to, like, the bad guys, and they give a face to, like, everybody else. In the first game, like, Federa's just, you don't really care about them. They're just shooting at you.
Yeah. Great performance also from Melina Linsky, who's Kathleen in the episode Dusk. What was some of your thoughts there on The Last of Us here, season 1?
Well, as someone who also has played the first game extensively, I played the second game, and that's another discussion entirely. That it's not placed here. We'll get there when they do that in season 2 or 3 or whatever the hell Neil Druckmann will do with the series after this point. I thought Mason was probably the best decision he could have brought in for someone who wanted to create a world, because he did a very good job with Chernobyl. A very good job of being, how do we take a world that's kind of fallen apart but still kept a lot of that greenery? That was a lot of the important parts of The Last of Us, the first game, was seeing how nature kind of taken it over, and the absinthe man, and a lot of greenery, and it was almost kind of serene and beautiful in a way, but then you had the chaos of this infected corpus and all these people on Joel and Ellie's journey. And it felt like a journey because many different characters came in and came out of their path, their interactions. At one point, they met Bill. At one point, they met another character, Henry and Sam. At another point, they meet other characters like the military people that they have to deal with. And another point, they have to deal with some really crazy people. And then they have to deal with others. And then they find all the way to get to the Fireflies to then have that gut punch as what they have. The big difference between this series and the games is something Neil Druckmann just isn't good at, and he just can't do it, is subtlety. He can't do it. He doesn't like gray morality. He just doesn't. He hates it. He despises it. He despises it so much that when you watch Pedro, it's like every decision with how Pedro Pascal plays Joel is so inherently different from the way Troy Baker played him in the games. They might as well not be the same person. Pedro Pascal would not have survived the amount of stuff he did 20 years plus for him to make it. He would be dead year 5, year 3. I'm being generous. Yeah, he has a couple of mean streaks, and he stabs some people sometimes. But he can barely handle people one-on-one. He's scared. He has panic attacks. He does different things, and he's quiet and soft. He lets people talk to him. Regular Joe would have taken a gun and blown somebody's brains out the minute they talked to him in a certain manner. He would never have offered his name in any other moment, and he would have had a very firm dynamic. You respected Joel because he was a ruthless guy who would do whatever it took to survive. That's how it got him. To composite that was Ellie. a 14-year-old who was smarmy, bit punky, but she had never been outside of that environment. And over the course of time, Ellie and his dynamic eventually warmed up to each other. It felt like a surrogate father and daughter by the end, and that's what made people care. Let's be completely honest. In the game, The Last of Us, Joel is the main character. Ellie is just one of the best written and well done plot devices that have ever been done, to the point where she becomes a character that you care about. But she is a means to an end. They just put so much to that house that she becomes its own character, and you care about that character. And the biggest sin about this show is for all the great little moments about showing how the world fell apart. And they are genuinely good moments. That's what makes this show frustrating for me, is they're genuinely good moments. The episode of 3, good moment with Bill and Frank, even if it completely diverges from what actually happened in the game, and that's not how that ended in the game, I forgive it because it's a genuinely good performance by Nick Offerman and Frank. And then I kept doing that. I kept forgiving the show for making cuts and doing this. Oh, this character is this now. Okay, Pedro Pascal's playing Joel. Diego Luna is playing his brother Tommy. Okay. But then you have Troy Baker and Jeffrey Pierce, who both played Joel and Tommy respectively. And they're just here in minor roles. And you have Ellie, who played the original Ellie. Ashley Johnson, who played her originally, who plays her mother. Oh, that's really sweet. That's a nice way of kind of making it full circle. And then I kept noticing all those small details, the things they changed, and it finally dawned on me: this is the show Neil Druckmann wanted to do, but this is what he wanted, the story they wanted to tell. And unfortunately, it's not about Joel and Ellie. It's just not. They are a means to an end to get to what he really wants to tell, which is The Last of Us 2. He wants this world so he can tell that story. And he just wants to get this over with, and he'll play beat by beat because that's what people like. And the dialogue is the same, but not the emotion. The camera angles used in that game is far more better compositioning, far better. And those pieces, over time, it start taking those away. You start losing emotion. You start losing care. By the end of this episode, I didn't care that Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal were surrogate daughter. They still felt like strangers. They still felt, and I'm just going to be honest, I think Bella Ramsey is just not good in this role. I don't think she just works for this role. I think she just cannot emote the way that she needs it, and the dynamic between her, and Pedro Pascal is very, very weak. And it's not really either of them's fault. I just don't think they have a lot of the similar lines, but the directions for the characters just did not help them reach that. But for Bella Ramsey herself, I think she was a poor choice for playing Ellie. She doesn't really look like Ellie from the games either, and I don't. And when I just did out of comparison, maybe I'm wrong. I'm gonna do a side-by-side cutscene breakdown from the games and the show, and I felt more emotion from the game's cutscenes than I do this, than I do them. When a game's motion capture and their characters are running circles around a TV show, you have problems. And another issue I found with the show is, where are the zombies at? Where's the zombies? If you're not being a part of gameplay is also telling a story. You've had to fight through humans and people, and you've had to fight through the core zone zombies. They are a major threat. They're everywhere. In the show, most of it's human drama and none of this. I've already watched The Walking Dead. I'm sorry, I've already seen that show. But if you're just giving me a new window dressing, I'm not impressed. This isn't 2012. This is 2023.
Yeah.
I'm that's where I'm at here.
Yeah. Well, so I say response to the zombie thing. I think budget reasons they couldn't always show a lot of zombies. I think because they said mix of practical effects and then some VFX. So I think budget reasons they couldn't do a whole lot of zombies there.
Yeah, I think budget was a big reason why the infected don't really play that big of a part in the show outside of episode, I think 1, 2, and 5, which is the biggest set piece with them.
Yeah.
Which is with the infected rising out of the ground. And I think part of that is because if you have like a large amount of infected, we're fucked.
Right.
Because that entire scene is basically this show's hard home from Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
Episode 5, which is an amazing set piece. Watching it.
Yeah.
Then your point about, so, you know, as far as gray morality, I felt that with, you know, some of the stuff that Joel did, and I felt that as well with the Fedra stuff, because with Melina Linsky's character, it's like, you understand, you know what I mean? Like, this is great scene she has with this guy, the guy, and he's like, I get, you know, I helped bring you into this world. Like, I held you in my hands. Like, you know what I mean? You're doing this. And like, you know, even though she kills him, it's like, and then she's holding all these people hostage. It's like when she talks about what they did and to their neighbors and these people that they known their whole lives, you understand, you know, her perspective, even though it does look cruel. I mean, you get it, you know, and then it contrasts that with Henry and Sam. Like, Henry was this snitch, you know, for these people. It's like you get his point of view, because it's like, well, he had a little brother to look after. So I think, you know what I mean, you get both of their perspectives and get why she wants to hunt him down and kill him, and you get of why he was a snitch and why he did his thing. So as far as gray morality,
Yeah, and Josh, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with the show, because I've seen a lot of complaints about where the zombies in a zombie show, and if I'm being honest, all the stuff involving the infected is kind of the more boring parts of The Last of Us, because at its core, and both Druckmann and Mazin have stated this, at its core, The Last of Us is a love story. It's about the lengths people go, both about how everything good in the world and everything awful in the world is ultimately driven by love. It's driven because Kathleen's entire uprising, it's out of vengeance for her dead brother. This vendetta she has against Henry, it's for her brother. This kind of heartless, kind of emotional state that Joel is in when we meet him after the pilot, after his daughter's death. It's because he's terrified to be hurt again. Even Henry's actions, that you get more of his background in episode 5, it's because fuck everybody else, I am protecting my little brother. And that ultimately ties back into Joel's actions in the season's finale.
Yeah.
Which is something that has still being debated 10 years after the first game.
Yeah. And then
I think
go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say about like the zombie thing. I agree with Nick. Like I didn't care that there wasn't as much zombies like in the show as it is in the game, because like I think like in the game, like you need that. Like if there are no encounters with like the zombies, the clickers, then it's just an escort mission, like you said before. But like
it's working with the medium that you're telling a story. With the game, with a video game, you have to have a constant run-ins with infected. Otherwise, the game is going to get boring. It's just going to become an escort mission. Here, you can replace a lot of that with just the interaction between characters, which I think is so strong here, especially in Dusk. I disagree vehemently with you about Bella Ramsey, because I think she nails it as Ellie. I think she brings a lot of different dimension to Ellie that I think Ashley Johnson didn't. And I'm not trying to say one is better than the other. I think both are phenomenal. It's just different. And Pedro Pascal, who I think this is an all-time Pedro performance, especially in the first episode and in episode 6, when he gets to interact with Tommy and he breaks down his fear, and it's in a more emotional side. It's not that he's soft, it's that he's human.
Brandon, you were gonna finish up something saying?
Oh no, I was just gonna say like just to the like lack of zombies in the show. I think if there were clicker encounters like each episode, then it would get old. And like the way that they're used sparingly in this show, especially in the episode, was that with the bloater reveal, like is like fantastically done, and like it's kind of like worth the wait. It doesn't like feel overused or overdone. Like I feel like shows like The Walking Dead, because like that's boring. Like The Last of Us, it just uses zombies as a setting. It's not like the main draw of the show.
Yeah, even in the games to a certain extent, the infected, they're predictable. It's like if you got like a solid system of patrolling and taking them out, you can more or less have a functioning society like we see in Jackson in the second game.
Yeah.
If you just keep on top of them.
Yeah.
It's humans you got to worry about, which is like the theme of most post-apocalypse fiction.
Yeah. And another point that you kind of had, I was trying to remember another point here that you had, but yeah, like I said, like Brandon said, the sparingly kind of using the zombies there. I think that was a decision that also was probably thought of, and as well as the budget there. As far as comparing it to the game, I think you spend so many hours with these characters. And then, with the stories, like people were talking about like the episodes of, like Nick Offerman with Bill and Frank of like, you had people who just seemed like, well, this is pointless and it completely diverts from the story and, all this other, it's like, you don't understand storytelling because the whole point of telling that.
Those people are fucking idiots because Bill and Frank's story is meant to be the thematical linchpin of this entire season. It's about the lengths people do for love and the lengths people go to to protect their loved ones. And it's the episode that we get to see the first bits of Joel and Ellie warming up to each other.
Yeah. And
like, all right, I mean, that's fair enough, but as one of those idiots, I do get it. I understand where you're coming from on a story point. I get the themes. I've always understood the themes. I have no problem with being there, but at the end of the day, it's a theme that's not in tying to the actual story or plot. It's a thematic pull-in that is fully extended into one episode. Regardless of how good it's performed, regardless how even good it is on its own, then why don't you just make an anthology series that had nothing to do with Ellie and Joel and just make The Last of Us anthology about everything in the background? If Neil Druckmann wants to do that so bad, just make that show then and leave Ellie and Joel out of it and let that be in the games.
But don't you think it mattered to the plot because he knew them beforehand and then he went there because it was on their way to where they were going, and so he was going to go there for supplies. It's
a thing. They were going to go there anyway, and that entire letter, it just keeps nailing home this feeling of failure that Joel has, that eventually leads to his breakdown in episode 6, that he tries to ditch Ellie onto Tommy. It's this constant feeling of failure that ultimately ends up fueling his decision in the finale, because I have failed to protect everybody I have ever loved. I've failed Sarah. I failed Tess. I failed, to an extent, Henry and Sam. I am not going to fucking fail again.
I get that. I'm done. Move on.
Brandon, since you played the video game as well, do you have anything to discuss as far as like Bella Ramsey's performance as Ellie, Pedro Pascal as Joel, as well as any of the other characters? What's some of your thoughts there?
I think Pedro and Bella brought like such an amazing kind of different performance to Joel and Ellie. Like I have seen like the people say Joel's like soft, but I think it's just a different dimension because as a video game character, you probably don't want your character to be soft or vulnerable. You want to be the badass. You want to be rolling dudes down.
There's a little bit of the power fantasy when you're playing a video game. And I feel like people project a lot of that onto Joel, even though outside even just watching the game, Joel is that bad motherfucker. And I think seeing a lot of that emotional vulnerability from Pedro's performance, it makes when he finally snaps in the final 2 episodes, it makes it hit that much harder for me because we have seen this guy be human. And we know this motherfucker can turn it on when he needs to.
Yeah, like even in the first episode, like we get a sneak peek of it with like that federal officer that almost shoots Ellie, and he just goes ham on his face, and that's the Joel that people love. And
you cut out for like a couple seconds there.
I was just saying that's like the Joel that people love to see, even though he's not the good guy, and that's like the the gray area that we see, even with like Bella Ramsey's Ellie. I think like Nick said, I don't think one version's better than the other, but Bella was really like, I don't know, made me love the character a lot more. Like her solo episode and her flashback episode were like some really good stuff, and like I don't really remember the DLC like with her, like so it was really refreshing to like watch it on screen.
Yeah, Left Behind, the 7th episode, where it is Ellie's flashback episode to the night at the mall where she got bit with Storm Reed, who plays Riley. I think that's the episode that is the closest to being a 1-to-1 adaptation from the DLC. But it is such a beautifully told story that is kind of where I'm at with the rest of the show. It's done so beautifully, and it's bringing so much of a different element to the world of The Last of Us that I was able to turn my brain off of that comparison. Because if I want that elements of The Last of Us game, I can play the game. If I want the story done with kind of a different flavor, I can watch the show.
Yeah, and I think you just killed me with that, because it's an adaptation. Like, I think most video game adaptations get a hard time because they're not 1-1 to the game. But like stuff like this and like Sonic, Castlevania, and they're not all like straight up just the game. They hit those beats and like you get like those references and sometimes exact 1-to-1 moments. But then I think like the better parts of the show that I enjoyed were like when it subverted my expectations, when it did different stuff from the game, or like I got to see more of Joel and Ellie like that I didn't get to see in the game and stuff like that. But yeah, I am so excited for Bella Ramsey because she gets so much more to do as Ellie for like the next season, and I'm of course very scared for her because people are gonna probably hate her some more. But it's gonna be really exciting because I think Bella and Pedro have amazing chemistry together, and I want to see more of that.
The second I hear somebody like complain about Bella Ramsey's performance, I just go back to episode 7, Left Behind, where we have this amazing, essentially a date between Ellie and Riley, and there's a moment where Ellie kisses Riley, and you can see for like a split second of, oh my god, did I cross a line? And she says, I'm sorry, and Riley says, for what? And just the sheer wide-eyed look of joy that somebody that you like feels the same way about you is so emotional, especially because it's basically, and I talked to you about this, that one infected in the mall was basically Uncle Ruckus's dad from the Boondocks. It's like, did I just get you having fun?
Pretty much.
Dusk, what's some things you liked about it? Is there anything you like really liked about the adaptation, or?
Everything that's good about it is the direction, the costumes, the design, most of the cinematography when characters aren't involved in talking. I think they do everything else. The action's well put. I think basically everything that's related to the games they did fairly well. Everything architecturally, every costume design.
The music.
I think everything, all the window dressing is good. All of it feels like the game, but it's not quite. You know what it is at the end of the day? At the end of the day, it's like going to your favorite, or at least a restaurant you liked. It may not have been your favorite restaurant, but a restaurant you liked, and instead, now it serves only vegan options for that restaurant that you liked. Well, the food's still pretty good, but man, I missed when it didn't have that vegan option, and it's still good, but it doesn't. It's something's off. It doesn't quite taste the way it did before. That's basically what this. I could go on in all the details of the things they changed and quote unquote adaptation, and I'm sure whatever. But at the end of the day, I think everything. If I'm going to point and praise anything to the things that turned out, it's because of Mazarin. I put no stock in Neil Druckmann doing any of those things right. honestly, he's kind of like a George Lucas character, except George had more standby than this. He kind of gets more credit than he deserves for actually creating it. In the original Last of Us game, it was a team of 12 writers, and really the person who, and along with Amy Hennig, who's one of the best writers we have in video games, bar none, and Bruce Straley, who left Naughty Dog not long afterwards. Bruce Straley was the one who really corralled and kind of brought the magic and more like intimate characters and more nuance here. And I think Neil Druckmann's been very good at kind of coasting on that for a while. But the cracks start to show, but that's me. I'm paying attention to this kind of stuff. If you guys enjoyed it, that's great. The things I did enjoy, I did, but it's never went past the almost good. Almost. But that's it, honestly.
Yeah. So what's your final rating, and then
for my final rating for
what's
the
your
show,
thoughts about season 2? There.
There's two options they have for season 2. Straight into Last of Us Part 2, which I think would be very foolish for him to do. I think that it just would not be smart. But then again, he's made dumb decisions before, so fuck it. Or what I think they're going to do is they're going to just make up a whole bunch of new characters, or slowly introduce the characters he wants you to care about more, so that the gap between Last of Us Part 2 can be remedied somewhat. Oh, we're going to introduce Ellie's next love interest. Oh, we're going to introduce Jesse. We're going to introduce other characters here and there as they get accustomed to Jackson and maybe some of the misadventures they had during that time, and kind of talk about the middle season there while ending it on the third season. So that's probably what they're going to do. They're probably just going to have with a lot more new characters, or talk about other things that were going on alongside it, and kind of boost it up and continue the theme of whatever theme that season's going to be. Which is probably survival at all costs or things like that. So yeah, overall, man, costume's good, everything's good. I just don't like some of the smaller details and some of the characters and some of the acting here and there. So because of that, it's a stream it. It's probably a stream it. Honestly, go watch a compilation of the YouTube of the game. You'll get the same thing you got out of this, but with less time invested.
Interesting. All right. Any casting ideas for Abby there, Dusk? You want anybody?
Okay. Here's a thing for Abby. With all the respect in the world, good luck to whatever actress picks Abby. Good luck, because you're in a lose-lose situation. No matter how good your performance is, Abby is one of the most controversial characters and she got a lot of wrongful hate. The actress got a lot of wrongful hate for her playing a character in a game that people liked, and a lot of not okay insults and a lot of not okay. It's like, I may not like someone's portrayal of a character, but I would never, ever, ever condone someone taking that to any level of that kind of extreme. That is not acceptable.
Yeah, that's insane.
Never acceptable.
It's so yeah. A lot of the treatment Laura Bailey got after The Last of Us 2 came out, it's disgusting
because it's not her fault.
And if you were one of those people, fuck you. I hope you get a fucking flat tire on your way to work. Oh, but that would imply you had a job. Oh,
right. So whoever the actress, she's gonna have to have she's gonna have to have skin of steel.
It's gonna be an uphill battle no matter who you
no matter what happens. So yeah. I couldn't even pick it because I wouldn't even that's a situation you have to know full well going in. No matter what happens, no matter how good your portrayal is, you're gonna get a lot of hate regardless. So good luck.
All right. Stream it from Dusk. Brandon, final thoughts. What you want from, and also what do you want from season 2? What are you expecting?
Just to go back to what Dusk said about like Neil Druckmann kind of like setting up things for like part 2. I think that definitely correct, but I think like in this aspect it's kind of warranted since it, like Nick said, it's a 10-year-old game, so like and part 2 is already out and he done that, so he of course wants to make it more of a cohesive story. So I like the bits of part 2 isms that we got, even like the themes of like Ellie is a really violent person, guys. Remember that. Stuff like that I really enjoyed, and I'm excited to see Ellie's story expand in season 2. I think we're definitely going to get some middle-ish season kind of thing, since part 2 did have some flashbacks that we did not get a lot of time between.
Part 2 had a lot of flashbacks in between the time where the games are set, and both Druckmann and Mason have said that if they are going to tackle the monster that is The Last of Us Part 2, it would have to take place over multiple seasons, which is the right call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 seasons seems right. I don't know about 4, but 3 seems right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm super excited for season 2. I know it's going to be a long ass wait, but it'll be worth it most likely. I really enjoyed what we saw in part 1, and I hope they make a lot of the same things they did with this, a lot of changes, and like reinforce that. Like, don't be afraid to change things, especially since part 2 is already controversial enough. Like, I still love that game, but like, you have hindsight now, so you can do what you want with these characters in this setting. But yeah, I really love this, and I probably am going to play the game again soon, and watch the show again eventually. But yeah, watch this.
Yeah. What's what be your rating there? Tune in. That's our this is Cinema's highest rating, and then Tune In is below that. Give it a strong Tune In.
Ooh. I am I'm not gonna back out. I'm gonna say this is Cinema.
Okay.
Okay. I really love this. This is probably one of my favorite video game adaptations, and I think more video game adaptations should look to this when adapting stuff. Like, get the video game creator on board. Don't do this by yourself. And don't do everything the same.
Yeah, and something that I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, and I don't necessarily think getting the creator of the game is as necessary to have a good adaptation. I think what makes a good adaptation of a video game is respect for source material.
Yeah, true.
It's respect and love and admiration for source material, because that's something that we hear constantly with other adaptations, like with Uncharted, where where fucking Ruben Fleischer didn't even play the game. The Witcher, those writers didn't even play the game. They fucking hate that video game, and they were getting pissy at Henry Cavill for, because he's a fan and actually had notes about how to get it closer to it. And Sonic, those motherfuckers clearly love that property.
Right? Yeah. It's insane. So yeah, and just Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, they seem like they actually have a good kind of relationship. Like, they like to collab. So,
I was listening to the Last of Us podcast that HBO did. That's hosted by Troy Baker and is guested Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. And the way I feel about their dynamic is kind of what I feel about Bruce, and this might be a little bit hyperbolic, about the dynamic between Bruce Timm and Bruce Timm and Paul Dini back when they were running the Batman the animated series, and how those two were kind of able to check each other and kind of correct their worst instincts, because you see what happens when they aren't working together. You got the Killing Joke movie.
Nick, final thoughts? Season 2 thoughts? Rating there?
So right about the time episode 5 premiered, I took a trip back home to Tampa, visit my dad, spend some time with the family, and we were just kind of having a lazy day because we were, drinking the night before, both a little bit hungover. So my dad asked me, because I watched the pilot with him when it premiered and he hadn't caught up since. It was like, hey, is there more Last of Us on? And we just spent the entire day watching it up to episode 5. And that's one of the biggest joys of my life, is getting to share the story that I love from the first game with my dad, who has never even touched a PlayStation controller. And my mom, who after every episode was like, whoa, next. And when episode 5 finished, they were like, there's no more. And even when I've been back in Jacksonville away from home, my dad's texting me about the show. And that's something I think is kind of beautiful about this, because to me, The Last of Us, the first game, is the single greatest story ever told in the format of a video game. It is perfectly capturing this theme of love and both the great things it inspires and the horrific things it inspires. And that is something I think that the show nails 1-to-1. Where the show does improve on, and improve is kind of a strong word, but where it adds something new to the story is adding perspective, which Druckmann tried to do in The Last of Us 2, which I like the game, but I felt like that could have been done better.
Yeah.
And here I think he nailed it, especially with the guiding hand of Craig Mazin.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, this is an all-time Pedro Pascal performance. His performance in the pilot, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The pilot of The Last of Us is among my favorite TV premieres of all time, especially when you get Pedro Pascal in his interaction with Nico Parker, who played Sarah, and that coldness of the initial dynamic between Joel and Ellie and how it slowly develops and slowly warms up over each episode to the point where Joel by the finale is basically awkward dad. And it's kind of beautiful. And I felt like where this show does improve aspects from the game, like changing Bill and Frank's story, because Bill in the game is meant to represent Joel if he didn't have Ellie, if he didn't have Tess or anybody. And I think what they ended up doing with Murray Bartlett as Frank and Nick Offerman as Bill is so much more beautifully done. And every time I rewatch that episode, I end up crying.
Yeah.
And so much of just adding new dimension to characters that we only get glimpses of in the game, like something we didn't talk about, David, who's played by Scott Shepherd.
Oh God, yeah.
They change his character enough, but they make him so much more terrifying to me versus what Nolan North did in the game, because you can tell looking in the game that this motherfucker is trouble.
This is a bad guy.
Yeah, even down to the way he looks. But I think Scott Shepherd does such a good job of playing David where you are completely disarmed, but he's so disarming, but it's in a way that, looking back on that episode, it's so manipulative. It's gross. And I was happy when Ellie smashed that motherfucker's face in.
Oh, okay. So you give a rating?
Oh, I absolutely loved this show. I kept up with it week to week, and I started a group chat with both Brandon and a previous show guest Jamarco, where it was like, "Well, time for my weekly traumatizing."
Yeah, pretty much.
I loved this show. Every single episode. Every episode made me emotional in ways that reminded me of my love for the game, but also added something new, which I can't say for most video game adaptations. I loved this show. This is probably one of my favorite single seasons of TV in very recent memory. I give this is cinema.
Okay. Hello there, Sir Ganja NZ. I said, in my view, the first season was too short and lacked action. Just in my opinion, I can look past the way they killed off some different people, killed off people different to the game. I did think in 9 episodes, I was expecting another episode just to be a nice rounded 10. That was kind of weird. They just did 9, but I thought this was very strong. I think this is probably the best live action video game adaptation ever. Even though the competition isn't that strong, this is very much very good. Did like Pedro Pascal, did like Bella Ramsey. To seeing them kind of grow and develop throughout the series was very good to watch. The joke book was very good, like seeing them kind of do that and kind of him soften up was really good. And just the string of episodes, one hard-hitting episode after the next hard-hitting episode, just seeing so many kind of depressing fates for a lot of different characters. I can, binging it was like, wow, just seeing it, episode to episode. I can only imagine people watching it week to week, the different impact it had. And this was a very successful show. It was the most viewed show for HBO. It surpassed The House of the Dragon. So it's very successful for HBO. So a lot of people, it was like the new big water cooler show for a lot of people, where they would just sit around and talk about it, discuss it on the internet. So that's kind of huge for it. I'm looking forward to a season 2 with this, and getting people watching this who haven't played the game, interested in, into video games, into the Last of Us game, and just video games in general, and just more trying to find out more good video game stories. So I think that's also very good. The effects of the show were really good. The music was really good. I thought a lot of the performances were very strong from everyone all around, not just from the two main leads. I thought, speaking of Melina Linsky, I thought was very great. Nick Offerman was very great, stepping up in here. Anna Torv was very good, stepping up in here. Even the little, the voice actors from the game making their appearances here, like Troy Baker or Ashley Johnson.
And it's
Marlene. We didn't make Marlene.
It was so surprising that they played roles in this, because even Troy Baker said in an interview, is like, I thought they were just going to bring me back to play a clicker or something. but every one of the main cast from the game, because you have Jeff Pierce, who played Tommy, you have Merle Dandridge, who's reprising the role as Marlene, Troy Baker, who played Joel, is playing a member of David's cult, and you, of course, Ashley Johnson, who's playing Anna, Ellie's mom. And they get so much to do with what they're given, and the point where the opening of episode 9, which is Ellie's birth scene, it's heartbreaking, and it just reminds me how underrated an actress Ashley Johnson is.
So I think very strong. So I'd give it a strong tune in for me. I did really enjoy The Last of Us.